and welcome to Nigeria, the Road to 2019, a series of programs where Arise News places the audience and the choice at the heart of our coverage of the upcoming presidential elections. I am Christian Ogodo. Thanks for joining us. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, all the news, comments, and analysis that provide unrivaled insights into Nigeria 2019. We focus on the frenzy of electioneering campaign and promises that the electorate is usually inundated with, especially now as Nigeria's general election is just 40 days away. We examine two of the leading political parties, the ruling All Progressives Congress APC and the opposition People's Democratic Party PDP, and their campaign promises to the Nigerian people. What are the crucial issues the two parties are bringing onto the table for the electorate to make a choice? Today, we have first a chieftain and one of the campaign spokespersons of the People's Democratic Party, Osita Chidoka, as our first guest. And in the second half of the program, we'll be joined by the Deputy Director Strategic Communications of the APC Presidential Campaign Council, which was formally inaugurated today by President Muhammadu Buhari at the International Conference Center in Abuja. Well, for more analysis, we turn to the spokesperson of the Atiku campaign, Presidential Campaign Organization, Osita Chidoka, and he joins me now in the studios. Nice seeing you again.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Away from the hustle and bustle of the road safety job then, and even Minister of Aviation.
Well, that was like a lifetime away.
Absolutely. Now, let's go straight to the issue, business of the day. What are the critical or cardinal points that the PDP is selling to the Nigerian electorate? Because it's all been, some analysts, political analysts say it's all been mudslingings here and there.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. And I think the first thing I need to do is to set the narrative right. As we are today in Nigeria, the contest that we have before us in Nigeria today is the contest between two contending worldviews. And then one of the worldviews is a worldview that says that the state is capable of performing the functions of the private sector, it's capable of managing the government, running the state. And another worldview that says we need to, to unleash the energies of Nigeria. We need to allow Nigerians to do what businesses can do and allow the government to be the regulator. Now, 3 years of trying this have shown that Nigeria has come to its knees, and I'll explain that. In 2012, Nigeria got one of its highest foreign direct investments in a quarter, and it was about almost $3 billion came in, about $3 billion came in 1 quarter in 2012. That was a high water mark. In 2018, second quarter, it is $438 million. This is a vote of no confidence by the international community. What has led to it? It's a government that has decided to expropriate capital from foreign governments, the MTN saga, the Stanbic Bank, the banks in Nigeria.
No, those have committed infractions.
Just hold on a minute.
You have the regulators there to check them.
No, just hold on a minute.
Fine.
Hold on.
Yeah.
No. The regulators went and debited the accounts of banks without a court order. They have resolved the matter with them. They went and debited the accounts. When you say somebody has committed an offense, you confront the person. You go through a process. They didn't go through that process. It was a process of expropriation. Now the government has backtracked and said, we have settled amicably. We are not going to do as we've said. MTN is no more going to pay fine. They owe no liability. This is what you should have done beforehand, because foreign capital is fungible. It will move to the next location if you don't treat it well. Now, the second aspect of it is that this is a government that have decided to paint a picture of what is not existing before Nigerians. I'll take the 2018 budget as an example. The government have said these key assumptions that they will do 2.3 million barrels a day. Today we are doing barely 1.9 million barrels a day. And OPEC quota for Nigeria in 2018 is 1.6 million barrels. So where are you going to get 2.3 million barrels? So the basic foundation of the funding of the budget is faulty. The next one, the budget goes on to make another key assumption. We will use 305 naira to the dollar. Me and you know that the dollar on the Nigerian streets is 360 naira, that no businessman finds dollar at 305 naira. The third assumption is that inflation will be at 9.9%. And we know that the expectations, even the World Bank, the IMF have put inflations in Nigeria at 13%. GDP growth was put at 3-something%. We know it's about 1%. So fundamentally, the government has papered over a serious crack in our national revenue profile. Where are they expecting the monies from? The bulk of the money is going to come from oil revenue, which they have put at 2.3 million barrels a day. If you put that at 3 million barrels a day, they are thinking they will get about 3.7 billion of the money naira from it. Now, and then independent on non-oil revenues will come about 1-something billion. There is a 1.6 billion naira deficit, 1 trillion in this budget. Now, despite the fact that the revenue assumptions are faulty, the government has budgeted money 2.2 trillion for capital expenditure. Record shows that they don't spend more than 20% every year on capital expenditure. 4 trillion for recurrent expenditures and 2.1 trillion for debt, meaning that when they borrow more money in 2019, we're going to have a higher debt profile. So what is happening today is that we have substantially a government that is falling apart, a national crisis. What Awolowo said, the ship of the nation is about to hit an iceberg. It is time for the government to come out of its high horse and discuss with Nigerians on the way forward. Now, why do I think we should discuss the way forward? We haven't even factored in the concept of fuel subsidy. The government is spending about $24 million every month on fuel subsidy. So if you look at the amount of money that we're spending on fuel subsidy, saying we import 50 million liters of fuel every day, then you see that another 1-something billion to $2 billion is going to go for fuel subsidy. And if you take it that we have Boko Haram now fighting us in a critical war in the northeastern part of the country, that war is going to require Nigeria to make some new investments in defense. $158 billion was budgeted for defense. That is not going to cut it. So the government is going to look for more money for the military. $500 million, less than $500 million is not going to work for the Nigerian military to prosecute a war where Boko Haram has captured many villages now. So at the end of the day, the prognoses are bad. If the election happens in 2019 February as being planned, and we do that election, and Nigerians in any way or manner does not elect Atiku Abubakar as president, this ship of the nation will unravel greatly. Why is Atiku Abubakar critical to this? The new international engagement that will happen with Atiku Abubakar coming to power will immediately give us time for us to renegotiate our looming crisis. Part of it is that our debt situation is unsustainable. And then to worsen the matter, the government of today has introduced new problems into Nigeria. What is that problem? Nigeria, for the first time in its history, have never been as divided as we are today. The idea of federal character has been jettisoned. The national unity that we used to enjoy, that made us, 9 years after the Civil War, somebody from the war part, the rebel part, became the vice president of Nigeria. Nigeria is a country, a forgiving nation. Nigeria is a nation where we came together in 1999 and said we are zoning the presidencies to the Yorubas because of June 12. And we allowed 2 Yoruba candidates to go. So this country have worked on consensus and building consensus.
Is that why
this government have disaggregated consensus?
Is that why your party too is taking advantage of saying, look, give Atiku the ticket, and in 2023, yes, the Southeast will
absolutely
go for the
This is how Nigerian unity has been built. Nigerian unity has been built on the concept of consensus. This government is the first time that the federal character has not been respected. So now, if you look at what I have explained to you now, we have a looming financial crisis. 2.1 trillion to service our debts. And if we don't get the oil revenues we're expecting, that means that debt servicing will grow up to almost more than 50% of the budget.
But FIRS, for example, raked in over 5 trillion. You have that of custom, totaling almost 2 trillion. Other agencies of government like MPA, NIMASA, and the rest.
So all of that, the government have said will give them 1.13 trillion in 2019, by their own estimates. That's what the government have said. They will get 6 trillion from revenues. about 3.7 from oil, 1.3 from non-oil, and about another one from independent sources. The rest will come from debt. They say they will borrow from domestic and international markets to fund the 8 trillion budget.
What new economic outlook will your presidential candidate, be re-engineering and helping hasten that growth that you complained, is being truncated or is reversed?
First of all, we're not going to take 7 months to form a cabinet in Nigeria. We're going to immediately form a cabinet to give the international community, give them the clear signal that Nigeria is ready for business. We're not going to have a president that is not on top of the situation in the country. Now, second one is that we're going to, first of all, unify the country, create a new national consensus. That is critical for any economic planning. In creating the new economic consensus, in the national consensus, the second thing that we will do, and which will be very critical to making Nigeria work again, is to let every Nigerian know that there is something we all have to give to make Nigeria work. We have to review again the expenditure profile of the government. We have to review again the extensive engagement, use of government resources.
That means under a PDP government in 2019, you're going to rationalize workers.
No way. Now, I've told you something. In 2018 budget, the government have not factored the 19 budget, the planned increase of 30,000 minimum wage in the budget. It's going to hit us sometime in March, April. And they are hoping they can keep it till after the elections, when it will crystallize. But in us creating the jobs again, what we need to do in Nigeria, first and foremost, is to unleash the capacities of our private sector, is to go back again to the investments that will make our oil industry grow again, is to make sure that our power sector, the liberalization we've done in the power sector, is intensified to bring about rapid engagement in the power sector. So I believe that what is happening today is that the APC government has constrained government. They have constrained growth. They have constrained the capacity of Nigeria to unleash economic potentials.
The APC government, the president said they needed to control the leakages in government, and that's why you have the TSA, which has made tremendous savings for the country today. All those wastages are a thing of the past.
No way. I have to take you back to facts. The problem is the TSA is a program of the PDP government. It was the
but
Jonathan
you didn't have
government.
The political will to have implemented it.
No way.
Why did you have to wait?
Because they didn't understand the philosophy of implementation of the TSA. The TSA, as it was done, created great shocks in the economy. But despite that, by government admission, the amount of money of independent revenue collected by government in 2018 was less than what the PDP collected in 2014. What the government collected, despite the TSA implementation in 2018.
In 2014, oil was still selling for close to $100 per
but that
barrel.
was not the reason why the independent revenues. That is for the oil revenues.
Yeah.
The independent revenues that are coming from NDAs and government. Yeah. What the government collected in 2014 is still more than what they collected in 2018, despite the devaluation of the naira by over close to 70%. So what I'm saying in effect is that you cannot run a government with propaganda. It's not going to work. Government is not opposition. It's not a system where you keep going about lamenting.
But the ruling party thinks that is what, the PDP is hinging its campaign on for the 2019 general elections, raising issues that are not evidence-based.
What have I told you here today that is not evidence-based? That this budget is clearly not going to work. 2018 budget didn't work. The government average performance of capital expenditure has been at about 18%. What have I showed you here? That the government revenues is shrinking. The DG of the budget office, Mr. Kaboeze said, we don't have an expenditure problem. We have a revenue problem. Our revenues are not just enough. How do you create revenue? How do you expand the opportunities in the economy that international finance will come? Listen, in 2014, we had the Moody ratings for Nigeria. Nigeria had the JP Morgan index on the international market. Our bonds were able to sell at lower prices. Now, by virtue of government decisions and indecision on the foreign exchange system in 2014, by wasting time in 2015, by wasting time in deciding on the direction of the foreign exchange, we lost our ratings. The outlook on Nigeria became negative. All international funders. So the capacity to grow this economy it's now greatly limited. The major challenge in the power sector, for instance, is that all the projects that are given to hire to increase in power production are the products of the PDP
16 years of
Yes.
PDP.
Yes, these are the projects.
How long does it take to complete a gas-powered...
Well, ask that to Governor Fashola.
No, I want to put it to you, because how many did you complete in 16 years? That's what the ruling party is asking.
Let me tell you something. Every time that the people talk about the PDP years, all I hear them say quickly is, despite increased revenue, oil was at $100. The reality
More
is that
than $100.
PDP 16 years, average dollar rate cost of oil, the price of oil was $58. For the first 4 years of PDP, Obasanjo years, oil trended less than $30. If you average it out, it was less than $58. I'm not guessing. It's 58 US dollars. That's the average. There were some years it went up. There were years we went down. Even in 2008, we had a massive drop in oil prices. And what was it that saved the country? Because the PDP government had taught us something called excess crude account. We had saved money for the country. With benefit of hindsight, I would have said PDP probably would not have paid off the debt. The $18 billion we paid to get the reprieve of the debt payment, we should have probably plowed it back into the power project, because since we left Nigeria with no debt, this government has come and returned us to more debt. So it meant that the balance sheet that the APC inherited was a balance sheet that was strong. No debt. Low debt was what was on the balance sheet. Reason, PDP had, instead of sharing $18 billion to all tiers of government, used it to pay off our foreign debt, released us from rigorous negotiations every year with our creditors. Don't forget, these our creditors came about by the suspension in the 80s of the government to suspend payments of capital and capitalize the interest rates, the interest accruing. So we went into this every year before we do our budget. We come up with all kinds of negotiations with the London and Paris Club. But the Obasanjo government, in its foresight, decided to pay it off, and Nigeria became free. That was why we freed up the money to even start dreaming of the NIPP projects. That was how we began to have the money to start dreaming up of the rail projects that they are commissioned. That was how we were able to conceptualize the airport projects. That was how we were able to grow the agricultural base of the country. So when people talk about the PDP years, they forget that it was in the PDP years that we founded what you call the excess crude account and the sovereign wealth fund. What this government was spending, the money they have used to fund fuel subsidy, has come from the sovereign wealth fund.
How do you reconcile?
From the excess crude account.
Yeah, let's quickly go to the area of education. I mean,
yes.
Everybody talks about the poor ratings of the public universities or tertiary institutions in Nigeria. They're not properly directed, in creating manpower, the needed manpower, like the polytechnics and monotechnics and the rest. Maybe the years of their establishment then, it was to train middle-level technical manpower, but we don't seem to have that again. But how do you reconcile your principal's investment in private education and coming to run for office with public universities that are strangulated, not meeting the United Nations established budgetary allocation to develop this sector?
That's wonderful for Nigeria, that somebody is coming whose background now is to understand the enormous difficulty to provide tertiary education, who understands that his university has been running at a loss all these years because he wants to create avenue for young people to get quality education. Who has understood?
His university is a charitable
no, they can't make money because if he charges the actual cost of running that university, he's not going to have students. People can't pay for it. The reality of the situation is that we have come to a situation where he knows, like most of us who have been in government knows, that there is no substitute to public education. And the only way public education can work is to go back to the fundamentals. Herein comes in the word that Nigerians don't like to hear, the word restructuring. Restructuring is not about dividing Nigeria. It's about taking those functions that are closer to the people, the functions that the government can do at lower levels, and giving it back to them to perform. It is about making sure that our general pool of funds available to the country is directed in one energy to achieve an end. So education under the PDP government will have to go through again a holistic overview. Now, if you notice, during the Obasanjo years,
The
during
snowball effect that we're having right now, the academic staff union of universities that have been on strike for close to 6 weeks now.
Yes.
The MOU started with the PDP government and they never saw it out.
Well, MOUs with ASU has been on since 1992. I was in the university when ASU went on strike for 6 months. I started since when I've been in university. The ASU problem has been here because, like everything else, you sit in the room and the health sector comes in to tell you about the health sector. It's a tale of woe. And then you say, okay, we'll solve the health issue. Then the education sector comes in. The problem is even more serious than you understand. Then you finish with them, the defense people come in. The soldiers don't have bullets. Today, the delays in getting the procurement of the soldiers, we had the story of $1 billion released to the military, and the military said, well, we haven't received it. Because somewhere in between the president's approval and the disbursement, there has been unnecessary delays. Soldiers are being killed as our soldiers are sitting in the forest, waiting for arms and ammunition to arrive. The problem is that we need to rethink Nigeria and to remap Nigeria. This government does not have the capacity to do that. 3 years in government, the president has not had any stakeholder engagement on the different sectors of the economy. Obasanjo used to stand for hours talking with stakeholders, what is the way forward? The aviation sector, when we lost 3 planes in quick succession, we had the aviation plan that came out and brought about what you see today in the aviation sector. The fact that we haven't had major crashes again, that our airports are being rebuilt, that we now have track on all over Nigeria, came out from a stakeholder meeting. The education sector went into a serious stakeholder meeting when Mrs. Obegele Ezekwesili was minister, that came out with a robust plan on how to rethink our education, starting from the secondary school, primary school again, to make sure that our education is not just tertiary focused, is focused on creating people that can gain employment, that can employ people, not people looking for employment. This government in 3 years have not had any stakeholder engagement on any sector of the economy. There is no way you can review a sector without talking to the stakeholders in the industry, without bringing them together. The president needs to hear what is going on in the different sectors of the economy. He can't do that from sitting in the villa. He can't do that with sitting with the same people every day. He needs to come out of the cocoon and listen to the real problems in Nigeria. So I think that what the PDP offers Nigeria is the opportunity for Nigerians once again to own government. What Atiku offers to Nigeria is that capacity as the chairman of the Committee on Privatization. He saw through the privatization process in Nigeria. That the DG of BPE, the current DG, said privatization has saved Nigeria $3 billion from waivers, non-payments of fees, from things that government companies had enjoyed in the years that they were run by government. $3 billion. That's what privatization has saved Nigeria annually. So I believe that what we need to do today in Nigeria is to realize that this worldview, and there is none. The APC government has no worldview. We do not know what they stand for. We do not know what they want to do with power. They just want to stay in power. And all they have told you is 16 years of waste. And I said, if there were 16 years of waste, how come you inherited almost $30 billion in foreign reserve when you came? How come you saw $1 billion in the sovereign wealth fund when you came?
The President Muhammadu Buhari is repeated it often that he met an empty treasury, and he even stated that that's why he had to, one of the several reasons anyway, why he had to keep the CBN governor so that he can reconcile the books. So he's never hidden that.
I don't want to comment on that because I respect the president and I don't want his age to be an issue in this conversation. Sometimes, you know, when you say some things, I have an age father, so I have respect for age, so I don't want to comment on that. But I just want to tell you that there is nothing like empty treasury in government. The Nigerian government receives money on a daily basis. The Nigerian government have obligations, and the Nigerian government have income and revenue and expenditure. In 2015, he made a supplementary budget. In 2017, they went to the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And the Sovereign Wealth Fund was supposed to do the second Niger Bridge. At the time they were to do the second Niger Bridge, the Sovereign Wealth Fund had already received some money from the Jonathan administration to fund phases 1, 2, and 3 of the early works and to attract foreign capital to finish the bridge.
The PDP,
what did this government have done?
The PDP government did not do anything about the second Niger Bridge.
That's
it was
not
a
correct.
recurring.
No,
it was a
that's
recurring.
Not correct. Under President Jonathan,
yeah.
$40 billion naira had been paid, which funded phases 1, 2, and 3 of the early works. Phase 4 was awarded in August 2018, and the main contract was awarded. How did they get the money to award it? They took the dividends of the NLNG, $650 million from NLNG dividends, which belong to the three tiers of government. That is what they have used to fund the new projects, 5 new projects under the Presidential Infrastructure Development Fund.
Well, I really would have loved to allow you to continue and the rest, but time is of essence, and
Yes.
that's how we'll come to the end of the first half of the show. Osita Chidoka is the spokesperson, PDP Atiku Presidential Campaign Organization.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining
and I
us.
hope that you will help to get Nigeria working again.
Well, you're still watching Nigeria, the road to 2019. Plenty more still ahead, including the All Progressives Congress inaugurates its Presidential Campaign Council. The deputy spokesperson of the council will be speaking on President Buhari's second-term agenda and why the electorate should vote for him and the APC again. Don't go away. Stay with us.